Welcome to Influential Entrepreneurs, bringing you interviews with elite business leaders and experts, sharing tips and strategies for elevating your business to the next level. Here's your host, Mike Saunders.
Hello and welcome to this episode of Influential Entrepreneurs. This is Mike Saunders, the Authority Positioning Coach. Today we have with us Ellen Stamper, who's the Managing Director with Evermore Wealth, and we'll be talking today about retirement planning for women. Stamp, welcome to the program.
Thank you. Good morning.
Hey, I'm looking forward to talking with you. It's always neat to get people's perspectives on specific topics. And I know retirement planning is very broad and really focusing on women. I'm certain we will talk about some really good differences because I think that many people know, well, if you are a male, then here's some things, or if you're a female or women or head of household, all of that ties into your advice regarding retirement planning. So I'm interested in learning your perspectives there. Give us a little bit of your background and what your entrepreneurial journey has been up to this point.
Certainly. So I am a retirement planner in the Dallas-Fort Worth area. I've been so for the past 11 years. My background is in real estate, so it's kind of one of those scenarios where you go to school for one thing and you end up doing something totally different.
Yeah,
which is great. But yeah, so my entrepreneurial, journey would be just starting out as an advisor. When I first started, it was like most business owners, you don't really have a niche market, and you just kind of help anybody and everybody, but that then morphed into, I actually started working with dentists, and then that morphed into really helping serve, in my opinion, an underserved demographic, which is women professionals, women over 50 is my specific market. And then as time went on, just the idea of that once we get to retirement, how do you take those assets? How do you turn them into income so that you don't run out of money and you're keeping an eye on taxes, et cetera? It just really became an affinity for me. So that's pretty much what I do now.
Yeah, neat. And it's always like, just slight little pivots. And then you start noticing, you were working with dentists, and then you started noticing there was the need for women over 50. Was there a certain string or series of clients you started working with that made you realize, wow, this is a needed topic? What was it that brought that to your attention?
Yeah, I think it was a combination of things, Mike. One, it seemed as if I did my best work with the female dentists I was working with. Mm-hmm. So that was one thing, from a synergy standpoint. Two, statistically, as a lot of people know, women live longer. Therefore, on the statistical side, they're going to be their surviving spouse. Which means it could be 2 years at the end of their life when they're alone, trying to mitigate finances. It could be 10 or 20 years. But as time went on, it just seemed from a synergistic standpoint and from an underserved community standpoint that's resonated the most with me, and I think I did my best work there. Not to mention I have a 3-year-old daughter. So I'm trying to turn her into a financial whiz as well.
That's really good.
So, it was just really a natural progression. It wasn't forced at all.
Yeah.
So I just kind of went with wherever the wind took me.
Do you find that, I think in the back of my mind, I've heard this maybe statistically, but, these days, maybe within the last 10 years, let's say, encompasses these days. But people are no longer just retiring and putting a stake in the ground going, I'm done. They're retiring from their main career and moving into maybe consulting in the same industry or starting a business. Are you finding that same type of trend with women over 50?
Yes, I do. As a matter of fact, it's very rare that somebody's retiring when 65, 67, however old they are, they decide to retire, that they just want to stop working, or stop contributing to society. So I would say for all my clients, at least 80% of them do something, that furthers, something that's near and dear to their heart, whether it's volunteer work or, to your point, just additional, part-time work still in that industry. And then sometimes it's a totally different industry, something they've always wanted to get into, but they never did. But yeah, very few people just hang up their cleats and sit on the beach like you see on the TV commercials.
Yeah, and maybe they do that for like a month because it's like I just need a break, but then it gets to the point of okay, I've been so maybe wired to perform, and it doesn't matter if the woman over 50 is a CEO or a business owner, or it doesn't matter. You're just wired to work, and I think that it is great to have that break. I remember years ago reading the book 4 Hour Work Week by Tim Ferriss, and he talks about why wait until you're X age to retire and do what you want to do. Do it now. So set up your time. Right. If you own a business or whatever, but set up your life where you can take these mini sabbaticals or mini retirements and take 3 months and go do this fun thing so that then you're not really looking forward to retirement. You're kind of doing these little, hot spots all along the way. So are you finding a lot of the women you work with maybe already are business owners and then they're just going to throttle back? Or do you find that some are, just working in the corporate world and now they're set financially because you've worked with them, but now they really want to do that thing, maybe launch that business because now they have the means and the time to do that?
Yeah, I do see some of that. Me personally, I encourage that. Not everyone wants to be a business owner. Yeah. It's obviously a different, bowl of wax. But for a lot of my clients, if they open up that doorway, meaning while we're having meetings and we start talking through things and they have an inkling of wanting to start their own business, I highly encourage that. Again, not everyone does that. But I do have a good handful of clients that want to do that. And another thing you'd mentioned, Mike, which is interesting, is the desire for early retirement. So I have a lot of clients, though I work with that demographic, inevitably you do have clients that are younger. So I have some clients in their 30s and 40s. And a growing trend that I see is everyone wanting to retire at 55 or 60. Huh. Regardless of the industry that they're in. And again, retiring being just like we talked about, walking away, or really, I say this all the time, retirement is just cash flow. That's all it is. I tell people all the time, jokingly, I say, well, you can retire tomorrow if you want. It just comes down to what kind of cash flow your assets are going to produce. So these days, people aren't really wanting to retire just not to work at all. They just want to get to a stage where the cash flow from their assets covers all of their expenses, and the things that they want to do in life. And that could be at any age. Just
because that gives them the flexibility to do what they want to do when they want to do it. So it really, I just think that is so neat. In decades past, it used to be like, moonlighting. You would get a little side job and you'd almost like be ashamed of it. I've got something on the side. Nowadays, it's like the side hustle, and you it's like a badge of honor. Like, hey, I launched this thing, and it really is that whole financial foundation to give you flexibility. So we got some F's going there. Financial foundation to give you flexibility to do what you want to do when you want to do it. And yeah, it might involve taking that big old trip for a month or whatever, and it might involve giving back time. So I think that is, I see people in the financial services industry like yourself almost becoming sort of a life coach of sorts, because you're going, well, what do you see yourself in? And the money thing, we have to take care of that. But in order to see what amount of money you need, what do you want to do? And I'll bet you that you have some women and men, but you would work with that go, man, I don't know. That's a great question. What do you do then?
Yeah. There's a lot of life coaching going on when you're a financial planner, depending on what the level that you do it. But it's really just about passion, finding your passion, finding, why you want to get up every morning, whether you're 40, 50 or 70, identifying the passion, making sure that we have the money for it. And one thing that I see people do is that I'm not a big budget guy. I know that's probably a no-no as a financial planner, and there's a reason I say that. My saying is if you're doing everything right in the other areas of your life, you don't really have to make a budget. You don't have to penny pinch, meaning if you're saving the right amount, if you're keeping an eye on taxes, if your balance sheet is protected from, major threats. If you're doing all that stuff, you don't really need a budget. But one thing I don't see people do, or I see them reluctant to do, is to build in that budget, that travel budget, that passion budget. And that's one thing that I encourage clients to do, is to say, it's okay. If you want to spend, let's say $10,000 a year on travel, well, let's just put that on your spreadsheet. Let's put it in as a line item, and let's plan around that.
Yeah, that
Sometimes I have to
becomes almost
encourage
like
people to do that stuff.
like a non-negotiable. Like, okay, I'm going to do this, so now let's make it happen.
Right. Just right there along with the electric bill. We know we're going to dedicate $300 a month for electricity. Why not put, X amount of dollars a month for your travel budget or your passion budget?
Yep. I can tell that you live in a metropolitan area like me. I'm just outside of Denver. My electric bill's around $300, and it's like, I'm sure that some people would go, man, I'm in Oklahoma, and if I had a $300 electric bill, I'd be going crazy. But that is true. Is we need to know what those blocks of non-negotiable, even like stretch goals, but financial stretch goals. That it's like, okay, I'm now at the point in my life and career that I'm going to do this thing. So plan for it, put it in there. What are some other mistakes that you see women making when planning for the future?
I would say one of the biggest, and because sometimes you don't know what you don't know, but I would say one of the biggest issues is where you're putting your money.
Yeah.
So, I have a little process that I like to go through with clients when we first meet, and I call it Stamps 3 Rules, in which rule number one is save 15 to 20% of your gross income. So that's one big issue, not saving enough, regardless of where you're putting it. So I tell folks, if you're saving 20% of your gross income and you're putting it in a coffee can in the backyard, that's better than just putting 3% in your 401k and not doing any more. So it's the amount of money that you save versus where you're putting it. Then the next step would be, okay, now I'm saving a healthy amount. Sometimes you can't get to 20%, but we start with whatever we can do. But once you're saving a healthy amount, the next question is, where are we putting it? Are we putting it in tax deferred vehicles where we might get hit with a huge tax bill on down the road? Or are we putting it in a high fee vehicle where that fee drag is really going to lower the rate of return overall? So not saving enough and not putting them in the right vehicles and having them diversified. And when I say diversified, I don't mean just diversified in the stock market. Of course, you should be diversified in the stock market, but there are multiple asset classes. And I think one thing that separates me from a lot of planners is that, and maybe that's because of my background is originally in real estate, but I'm a huge fan of multiple asset classes.
Yeah.
So there are vehicles and there's products and there's all these things we can put our money into. And I ask people, why do you think they exist? All of these products and vehicles exist for a certain reason. So it's a matter of finding what works for you, but really diversify. When we can move into actual real estate ownership and business ownership, that's a great thing compared to just having all of our money in a 401k. So saving the amount of money that you should save, putting them in the right vehicles and diversifying those vehicles.
Yeah, and am I correct in thinking this, and maybe this is a quote that I'm getting wrong, but in my mind, I remember that it was attributed to Warren Buffett that says, put all your eggs in one basket and then watch that basket.
That is an accurate quote.
Okay. No, that's might not be an accurate mindset.
That has been said. Let me rephrase that. As when I say it's an accurate quote, that has been uttered in the history of the English language. But I think that was really, in my opinion, the way that landed on me is I think that was more of when you have a venture, when you're starting something, put all your eggs in one basket and watch that basket. So if I'm going to start a new business, it's going to be really difficult for me to start that business and then go start business B and then go start business C all simultaneously, right? If I can start business A and then just go all in, once it's up and running, I can start, looking at other things. So that's the way I took that.
Yeah.
But
and I would even add
as it relates to your money, I definitely wouldn't put it all in one basket.
100%. I mean, really. I mean, because most people could watch that quote unquote financial basket and go, I don't know what I'm watching for. So I think that one mindset would be, throughout life, I think that we mentioned life coach or financial goals. Your life plan will shift and pivot a little bit, not 90 degree, 180 degree, but these little nuances, right? So I think that maybe that one quote that came to my mind, we're kind of, let's dissect it out a little bit and go, okay, you know how I mentioned to diversify? In this time of your career, client, female over 50, we're going to be putting this into place. So why don't you go ahead and study up all on X, whatever it is, so that you're well aware of it. Now, that your client is not going to make the decisions or the to execute things. That's what you're going to do. But you certainly don't want to make moves on their behalf that they don't even understand what's going on. So they're watching the basket action could be just learning all about the whatever sector, industry, investment that you're recommending for them, because you want to be, I've heard this one, I don't know where this one comes from, but an active participant in your own rescue. Not that people need to be rescued, but in their own plan, be active, understand what Stamp is telling you. And it's like, oh yeah, maybe I ought to be doing whatever, putting some of my resources into this type of life insurance plan or real estate, like you mentioned. But understand what is happening and then study up on it. That's watching the basket. So that if someone said to you at a dinner party, hey, what is your financial, and they're like, I don't know, this guy just didn't know. You need to be involved and understand what is going on.
Well, I'm glad you said that, Mike. Planners typically, we all agree on a few core things, right? So for instance, we agree that you have to put money away for the future, and we agree that you should mitigate risk when you can. But from a way we transfer that information can be very different planner to planner. And that's the one thing that I've prided myself on, and I've gotten a lot of really great feedback, is from an educational standpoint, and I actually use that example that you use. When I work with a client, I don't want you to be at a dinner party and somebody asks you, hey, well, what are you doing for your retirement? And you say, well, I'm doing this, this, and this. And then when the person asks you, well, why are you doing that? You say, well, I don't know. Stamp just told me to do that. So there's a level of empowerment, educational and financial empowerment that I really want my clients to have. And I think we do a good job of that. And now that's as much as you want. And what I mean by that is some clients really love to dig into the weeds and really love the numbers. Other clients are like, hey, just give me a 30,000-foot view. But either way, I think that's important for people, with their money, to know what they're doing with it. Where is it going? How is it growing? How is it going to be taxed when you're ready for it? That's all really, really important. So from an education first mindset, it's something I've always prided myself on.
Yeah, I think that helps you to become what in kind of business, what I like to say is you're then the guide, because your client is the hero of the story, is you're guiding them and making recommendations, but not forcible, decisions. You're just going, hey, here's why this is really important. You should consider this one. Now, I know a lot of people think that this other alternative is a good idea. So let me just kind of compare these for you, because here's some pros, cons. What do you think, based on what we've talked about? I think that you guiding the process helps them to feel empowered and part of the process, not just like, because I would venture to say that if you think about stigma or, cliches, many times a female would feel like they're the ones that are just, shuffled around and just told, just do this because, society's always, whatever the case is. So I think that your education approach would really resonate well with your target audience. Have you noticed that people even, women even saying that to you?
No, I really have noticed that. I have some Google reviews. I have some personal testimonials that I've received from clients, and that's one of the things that's really stood out is being very thankful and appreciative of the process and learning and knowing what they're doing. And the thing about it is, those statistics are true. And another reason I like to serve this community. So women on average earn about 20% less than their male counterparts. So if you're in the same industry and you're earning 20% less, we have a little bit of making up to do when you hit retirement, because when you hit retirement, the costs aren't 20% less for you. When you go to buy a loaf of bread and a guy goes to buy a loaf of bread, you don't get a 20% discount just because you're a female.
Yeah.
Right. So we have to make up for that. Statistically, about 50% of women are unmarried when they reach retirement versus 30% for men. So there's a big gap of women stepping into retirement, being on their own, not having that second income or that second 401k to live off of. And women hold, a larger percentage of the student loan debt. Almost 2/3 of the student loan debt are owned by women. So it's another thing they have to navigate. And so, to your point about education, it's not only is it education, but it's also, again, the demographic and looking out for these threats and just preparing for them.
Yeah, I think, I mean, some of those points you bring up on women living longer and having this percent more, I think that people have always heard those kind of stats before, but then when you really bring it all together into now, you know what? Here's some of the ramifications that need to be thought of regarding retirement. And I would venture to say that the phrase or the concept of retirement is as scary to people as speaking in public. Like they say, it's like it's this big unknown. Like, whenever retirement is, am I going to have enough? And what is the tax rate going to be? And what if? So I think that, your service to your clients is so huge to be able to help educate them. And I love the big phrase when I go to your website that says rethink retirement. What is when you if you were to give a one sentence explanation of rethink retirement, what is the call to action there?
I would say if I could just make it succinct, you don't always have to or want to do what everyone else is doing. And there's a reason, I learned this really early in my career. The 10% of the population owns 90% of the wealth. Well, why is that? When you hear that statistic, that's probably telling you that 10% does something slightly different than the other 90%. That's why they are in the position that they're in. So rethink your retirement speaks into rethinking where you're putting your money, being okay to do things differently with your money than the other 90%.
Yes. Awesome. Well, Stamp, I really appreciate you coming on. And if anyone is interested in learning more about how you serve women over 50 and helping them make the wise decisions for retirement, what's the best way that they can reach out and connect with you?
Well, my website is lmstamper.com, so that's always an easy way to find me. If you just Google LM Stamper, I have my LinkedIn page, my Facebook page. Those are all channels that you can reach me. My business line, it's open for texting and call. That's 817-846-3005. But between all those channels, you should be able to reach me.
Excellent. Well, Stamp, thanks so much for coming on. It was a real pleasure talking with you today.
Thanks, Mike. I appreciate it.
You've been listening to Influential Entrepreneurs with Mike Saunders. To learn more about the resources mentioned on today's show or listen to past episodes, visit www.influentialentrepreneursradio.com.